Here's the big question this show answers. How do we leverage technology and human science to positively impact our personal and professional life? The Tech Human Experience has the answer. Here's your host, Inc. 5000 tech founder, neuroscience junkie, and Navy SEAL wannabe, Javier Guerra.
Hello, my fellow tech humans. Today's guest is the Chief Information Officer at DentalXChange, a dental revenue care management company. As a respected technology leader with 30 plus years of experience, he has a wealth of expertise in health tech and healthcare IT. Known for transforming operations, elevating teams, and driving innovation excellence, he creates supportive environments where challenges become opportunities for growth. Please welcome Scott Checkoway. Thanks for joining us today, Scott.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, always great talking with you, and excited to dive into some of these topics today that we're going to cover. Let's start with a stat or a fact, so to speak, on the cost of data breaches. So a staggering number for a recent report shows that the average cost of a data breach is now over $4 million, marking the highest it's ever been. In your role as a CIO, which of course focuses heavily on crisis management and operational excellence, what measures do you prioritize to mitigate the risks and impacts of breaches like this?
I measure it really on making sure that we try to never have an issue. And it's by having the right tools, the right processes. And it really comes back to that whole human approach, because you can have every tool, you could have every process, you could have a great book to have those processes, but it's all about the humans. So at where I am now at our company, we test everybody through phishing tests and through training and through opportunities, so that we make sure that our employees and really just anybody who's using our systems understands that clicking on any email could be a risk. Clicking on anything could be a risk. I call it a healthy dose of fear, because that next click could be the click that causes ransomware or causes a malware attack. And it's not meant to scare people, but it's meant to take a pause and really examine what you're clicking on, because we all get into those aspects of hurry up, get through the next email, and let me just clear my email box. And it could just be that one thing you click on. So the cost of ransomware nowadays is, it's too big for any company. I mean, look at what happened with Change Healthcare and the fact that their ransomware shut down everything. And it really shut down a lot of the country in regards to healthcare for a period of time. So when you look at that compared to the cost that it costs them and the cost that it costs patients, it's monumental. And if you think about it, all of us, if you think about everybody here in the U.S., chances are almost every adult has received some sort of notification about a data breach or some sort of ransomware that caused a data breach. So we've all become really accustomed to it in a way. And that's a little sad and scary at the same time. We really should be expecting more from ourselves, from our companies, from how we protect ourselves. So the measures that I put in place is making sure that we not only have the tools and the capabilities, but that everybody and every human has the training to make sure that they're really being cognizant about what they're clicking on and what they're opening.
Yeah, and they're getting really good, right? The bad actors. I've seen some.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I've seen some really well crafted targeting messages, right? Like they're using social engineering very well now, and I think the advancements in like GPT and stuff like that is really helping for them to put out more feelers and to get better at what they're doing in an automated way. So it is very scary, and it's definitely something that I worry about, right? Not so much from me, but just somebody on my team, right? It's
Think about
interesting.
this. With you talked about GPT. Now it doesn't take somebody who has coding knowledge to craft malware. Now you can do it with AI. Now there are ransomware as a service. I just talked about this at a recent event. And it's a real thing, and they, like, to the point that they have their own customer service on the dark web. They have their own ability where if you don't want to write anything, you can make a, you do a payment sharing plan, and they will construct the ransomware for you on your behalf, and they deal with the payment sharing. So sharing of payment between thieves. It's unbelievable. I never would have expected that. If you had that on a bingo card, I never would have expected it.
Okay, let's dive into today's topic: leading with empathy, driving innovation through resilience. In this episode, we delve into how leadership merges empathy and innovation, emphasizing resilience and collaborative problem solving to navigate the tech industry's rapid changes. Scott's approach fosters a culture that celebrates learning from failures and champions open communication, driving teams towards transformative success. So, Scott, we're on the same page as far as understanding the importance of great teams, great leadership, right? It's just so crucial when it comes to organizational success. But along the lines of really leading organizations or leading organizational change in IT, when leading organizational change, can you help us understand, like, how do you assess the current state of the team and structure to really identify areas for improvement?
I look at it in terms of how much workload is on each person's plate. Are people firefighting, or are they progressing forward? Or it could just be, is there a large matter of stress that's on each person's plate? We all deal with stress in different ways, and we all have stress from different outside factors. But is the job causing you some degree of stress that might be abnormal? We all have our degrees, so it's a matter of, when I come in and take a look in an organization, and really look at how stressful are the people around me, how stressful are the people from all the way from the top down. Is everybody hair on fire, or is everybody taking a calm, cool, methodical approach? And so it really tailors how I then lead and react. Because if there's a hair on fire, we're just putting out fires approach, I want to make sure that we're putting a plan together to get out of that mode, because that's not a long-term success for any organization. We want to get out of the firefighting. Versus if we're in a calm, cool, methodical approach, then it's really about strategic development and strategic growth, and how do we get to those next places where we can employ more best practices. If best practices are already being developed, how do we get to an advanced level? How do we make sure that people are being challenged so that they grow and expand in and of themselves? So I really look at it from those types of views and visions.
So, Scott, when you were talking, it's making me think about a couple of things. And one of the things is that if the human is in a state of fear, they are not able to function at their highest level, right? Their executive function, the brain won't function the way that they should. And they're kind of in a fight or flight mode and in a survival mode. And so it can degrade the performance, the teamwork, all of that stuff. And so, some stressors can create that fear, but then there's good stress of, like, how you mentioned, teaching people to, like, to grow and challenge them, right? Like, those are good stressors that actually help improve the organization, improve the person, improve their team, right? That kind of stuff. And but a lot of it lies in the individual and how they're perceiving it. um and I can give you an example here in a sec, but it just makes me think about that. Like, there's good stress and there's bad stress, and I'm sure you've had a lot of experience dealing with both of them.
Oh yeah, and you really do see how people operate think about in IT an incident. When there's an incident, something is down, people are clamoring for wanting the system back up. And so when everybody's under that stress, you really see how people operate. And to your point, there are people who deal with it well, and there's people who might have challenges with it. And so the people who are having challenges with it, afterwards, when we talk about looking at the incident later, there's an opportunity for coaching, and there's an opportunity to coach those people on how they could deal with their stress differently, and how they can maybe not take on that stress so emphatically when an incident's occurring, so that they can focus on the issue at hand. Kind of that good stress versus bad stress. And yeah, it's never a great time when something is down, but you can take that step back and take a pause and say, okay, let's just focus on resolving the issue and get our systems back up. And so it's a great opportunity for bringing everybody together. It's never great when something is down, but it's a great opportunity to get everybody together and get everybody focused on resolving that issue.
And I hinted about it just a couple minutes ago or a minute ago about kind of that perception, the perception of the person involved. And I forgot what book it was in, but it was talking about an analogy of a roller coaster. And so some people, if they're going up, right, they're going to the top of the roller coaster, getting ready to go down. Some people are fearful, right? They have that feeling of fear. Other people are excited, but the actual feeling is the same. But it's the brain's perception. Is it fear or is it excitement that actually changes the experience? And so a big part of it, I'm a firm believer in that. A big part of it is how our team perceives what they're going through. Where is their mind at? Because their mind is going to dictate how they experience whatever is happening, and it's going to dictate what they're looking for to like prove that experience is the way that they believe it is in their mind. So it's I think that's what a big part of where the coaching can come in, right? Is where the leader can come in to help to drive that change and really help with the team's perceptions of what's going on, what do we need to do as a team, and really kind of set that mindset and that what do you say, set the stage, I guess, for what the team is trying to accomplish together. I think that's huge.
For a leader, it's an opportunity to really evaluate the landscape of your people when something stressful is happening, and being able to take that situational awareness and then be able to coach those people on how they could do better, or how they could maybe alleviate that stress so that they can focus on the task at hand. So it's a for a leader, that the challenge is really not diving in as much as evaluating everything that's going on, and making sure that you've got everybody really functioning on all cylinders to help resolve whatever crisis might be occurring.
Are there any strategies that you could share that you've found like really most effective when implementing change, like maintaining morale and productivity on the team?
Being a good listener, which I strive to do every day, and there are days I fail and there are days I do better at it. So being a good listener, and taking a pause, taking a step back, and before reacting, before making a crucial decision, whether it's a 30-second pause, a 5-minute pause, walking away for a moment and coming back, taking that opportunity to take that pause, to me, has been something that has been profound, and something that I really feel every leader should take that opportunity to do before making any sort of crucial decision.
Yeah, it's so important. I need to do that more for sure.
It's
I need,
tough.
yeah,
I
I need to
again,
get
just
better.
like the listening, there are days I do great at it, and there are days that I realize I failed, and I need to reassess what did I do? Why did I not take that pause?
My 3-year-old will say, because of Miss Rachel, she would say, take a deep breath, make a smart choice. So, so can you really explain the concept of a technical timeout? Like how is it applied, or has it been applied with your teams, or use to address critical incidents, so to speak?
Yeah, this is something I'm very passionate about. I've been, and it really comes from a book that I read called Why Hospitals Should Fly by Dr. John J. Nance. And it was about, and Dr. Nance was a pilot who turned into a healthcare advocate. And he wrote about how a hospital could use checklists from the aviation industry to become better at what they do. And it really struck me from an IT level to say, one of the things that we in IT are not great at, and I think every IT professional would tell you, is we're not great at documentation. We're just not. It's just not in the wheelhouse of most IT people to want and have passion to document when they're working on technical stuff or stuff that really, they're trying to get through their work day and they just want to get on to the next thing. But the documentation has always been key. So when I think about those critical incidents, those downtime moments, I think about, my father was a pilot, so it was very much that book and Dr. Nance's aspect of it really spoke to me. So, I used to look through as a kid, I used to look through my dad's books and like everything was checklists. And so I think about a critical incident, a situation where something is down. It would be great to pull out a book and say, okay, here's the checklist. Here's the things we need to do. And so during those critical moments, especially when hair's on fire, things are down, people are all over you. Go back to the ransomware events. Those are the most critical events. A company is completely down and out. And what you want to be able to do, you want to have calm, cool, collective leadership and showing that your people, that you have that ability. And so you want to be able to pull out that checklist and say, here's the things we're going to do. Here's how we're going to do it. Here's our plan. And so having those types of situations, you can't plan for every single one, but you can plan in advance of having those checklists, pulling that out, taking that technical timeout. In a surgical situation, right before they do surgery, all of the people who do surgery stand around the patient and they have a surgical timeout. Everybody identifies who they are, what are they going to be doing, and why are they in the room. Same thing that happens during a critical incident when you have a conference call of IT tech people on a call, and you take that, what I call that technical timeout. Who are all the people on the call? Why are they on the call? What is each person's function? And so typically what may happen is you have a whole mess of people come on a call. And so, from a human aspect, people want to know what's going on, but you have a whole bunch of people on a call wanting to understand the situation. First thing that typically happens in a technical timeout, get all the people off the call who don't need to be on there. Have the people who are going to operate on the issue on the call, identify themselves. What's the plan of attack? Take 5 or 10 minutes. What's the plan of attack? How are we going to do it? How are we going to resolve the issue? And how are we going to document it? And so then instead of just hearing the clickety clack of keyboards, you have that moment where everybody's conferring with each other. And then everybody gets to working on the problem. So taking 5-10 minutes is not going to cause any further irreparable harm on the fact that you're already down. It's the aspect of everybody taking a collective breath and everybody understanding what their function is and what are they doing and why are they doing it. And thereby the leader can communicate upwards. The leader can also communicate sideways and can also make sure that the people who need to communicate to, whether it's internal or clients, have that information, have that communication. And everybody's remaining calm and everybody's doing the work that they need to do. So I've written papers about this. I've had talks about it. I'm very passionate about this technical timeout process. I think and feel in IT, it will continue to be something that will benefit more teams than not as the issues get more complex as we go along. The opportunity to take a step back briefly and just assess the situation before diving in is going to do wonders for us as people, us as leaders, for our clients, for everybody involved, so that everybody has an aspect of they can trust and rely on the work that we're doing. So I'm just totally passionate about this particular subject, and hope that it imparts to people taking that time out is not a bad thing.
Yeah, it's so important to be able to kind of get your bearings, so to speak, right? It's very easy for us to get caught up in the moment and make a rash decision, right? And not see a hole or two that maybe we're missing because we haven't taken a step back. And it's interesting that that there's you say it was like a pilot training that was incorporated into some of these stand-ups?
It's the aspect of these checklists of, hospital. If you think about a hospital environment and what they're doing, and mistakes in hospitals, unfortunately, are relatively high. They've been higher, and that's what Dr. Nance was really talking about in his book. Is there are ways to bring medical mistakes down significantly just by having checklists, just by having a process and procedure. And so, same thing in IT. There are, it's typically the simplest mistake that we make that causes sometimes the biggest issues. So having a plan, there's the aspect of what's called change management. So having change management, having a plan, having a back out, understanding what you're going to do, understanding how it's going to impact everybody, and understanding how you can recover from it if something goes wrong. All of that to be administratively documented feels arduous to people at times, but it's so important because you can then pull that information out if something does go wrong and say, okay, here's how we're going to back out, or here's how we're going to recover from this situation. And that recovery alone gives a sense of trust to the people around you, to the people above you, and to your clients, that you know what you're doing, and that mistakes may happen, but recovering from them and having a plan and a process to how to recover from them also helps alleviate that stress, because then you can just pull out the information, you pull out the notes, you know what you've got to follow, versus, okay, we're down, and we made this change and we're down and we don't know what to do. And so that's when the stress level gets, to those highest levels, because now everybody's trying to figure out, how do we fix the problem? How do we back out? What do we do? And now suddenly you're dealing with a more crisis management situation versus something that could have been more structured.
It makes me think. I'm drawing a blank on the books, but I've studied multiple Navy SEALs, and I think it was Mark Devine actually. Mark Devine, he's a guy that developed some training for the Navy to increase the graduation rate for SEALs, and he was like top head of his class. He was very high ranking Navy SEAL, and he in one of his books he's talking about how a lot of what the military fighter jets checklists and like systems or decision making systems are baked into a lot of leadership systems now, kind of like what you're talking about. Made me think about that. And actually, I just was at a half a day, it might have been a whole day event, but we had he was the Top Gun instructor, the head Top Gun instructor. His call name is Shark, head Top Gun instructor for 7 years. And he presented to us for a couple of hours. I think it was probably about 2-3 weeks ago. And he was talking about some things that, are similar to what you were just talking about, but it's funny how it all kind of trickles into everything. Some of these methodologies.
In the airline world, the aspect of crew management has been, that aspect of making sure that in the cockpit, for instance, that everybody functions as one, is the same thing that I'm looking to do during a technical timeout or during an aspect of IT crisis, is function as one, and thereby everybody's on the same page, everybody understands what they need to do. And so those aspects in aviation, especially from the 70s to the 80s, grew exponentially. There were unfortunately some pretty hefty accidents that occurred where this was learned behavior to get to this point.
I know that you're, you have confidentiality clauses. You have to respect the privacy of organizations that you've worked for, but are there any challenges that you've encountered that you can share of, like, maybe how you overcame them in relation to what we're talking about.
I have had the opportunity, unfortunately, to manage a ransomware recovery incident. So I speak from experience when I talk about high stress situation and a company having a problem where it's you're down and out. So it's probably one of the worst situations, unfortunately, to be in when you realize what's happened and how to recover. And you know when you're in, especially in the healthcare field, you think about your clients are your patients at the end of the day, and how do you make sure that they have access to their information again is just paramount. And so again, taking those steps to be calm, cool, collective over it was really it was one of those defining moments for me where because I was the one who was leading the actual recovery, and so I had thousands of people at my disposal to work with to help recover our situation. And so I wanted people to see, if I'm calm, if I'm able to have a plan and I'm able to direct, then everybody else should be able to do the same thing. And so there were moments where people were stressed, and so those were opportunities to pull those people aside and make sure that they had their concerns heard, or that they were able to vent out their concerns, so thereby we could get them back onto helping us with the problem. So again, the surest sign, unfortunately, of somebody's character can sometimes be this most stressful situation. And it's not an opportunity to chastise somebody. It's learning opportunities. It's an opportunity to make sure that person understands how much we mean for them to contribute, and that we want them to help us help everybody, and that they're here for our clients, for our patients in the case of healthcare. And that let's band together and let's make sure that we are able to solve that problem, or be able to come together and work through, whether it doesn't even have to be a crisis. It could be a project. It could be a task. Let's all come together and let's make sure that we're helping, making sure that we're getting our message out, or our task completed. And so it's so crucial. It's one of those scenarios where, again, you could have the best tech, you could have the best tools, you could have the best technology, but that you've got to have the best people in the right mindset to do the work. Even the best person has a bad day. And so you want to be able to recognize when they have that bad day, and how can you help them get through that bad day. And sometimes it's just a matter, from my leadership perspective, sometimes it's a matter of take the day off, take the rest of the day off. It's okay. The last thing I want you to do is make a mistake, that could be detrimental to you, us. Everybody has a bad day. And so from a leader's perspective, seeing that situation and being able to assess it and being able to handle it. And so those are, from a leader's perspective, everybody wants to rise to the top, but sometimes people have to realize what it means to be at the top and be that leader. And you have to really look at all of your people and the responsibility that you have to make sure that everybody's taken care of. I've always looked at it that way. It's, I make sure they're taken care of before me. And so, but I was raised from a military type family. So it was one of those aspects that, I have that training in me, so to speak, so make sure everybody else is squared away before I square myself away.
It makes me, something that you were saying made me think about the other day, right? And it's seemingly off topic, but it's very relevant. You mentioned like it's was something to the effect of how you're leading, like they're watching you, like how you're reacting. The other day, I forgot who was here. Oh, it was, so my mother-in-law was visiting in town, and my mom was watching my daughter that day, and she was taking her to somewhere, right? Because she goes to all kinds of lessons and stuff. And my mother asked my mother-in-law, "Hey, can you please watch my daughter?" She's probably two at the time. This was very recently. And I was outside on the street, like probably putting a car seat in the car or doing something, because we had taken a car seat on a trip. And my daughter came out and walked to the edge of the stairs outside. Like, so she was at the top of like some cement steps. And my mom kind of freaked out and ran up there, and she's like, "Oh, like, were you watching her? Like, I'm scared to death." And she was like kind of overreacting. And so I talked to her later. I said, "Mom, Ellie's watching you, and she's watching your mannerisms. She's listening to the tone of your voice. And if you're fearful and you're anxious and you're freaking out, she's gonna soak that up, and she's gonna take on those behaviors." And so I was just like, maybe we should, be careful and just be like, no big deal. Like, don't go down the stairs. Just, I'm coming, right? But it's the same analogy is like our teams are watching us and how we behave, and we're setting that standard. And there's a thing of the mirror neurons, right? Like, it's like if they're watching you do it, it's no different than their brain thinking that they're doing it, and it can kind of become ingrained as a habit if they keep seeing it.
And it's a domino effect, as a leader, you've always got somebody above you, and so you're looking at them looking at you, and so it can cascade in good or bad ways, and so you want it to always be a good way as much as you can. So that coaching opportunity is paramount, being able to coach people, and whether it's coaching down or coaching up. So I imagine it was probably an interesting scenario to coach either your mom or your mother-in-law. That's kind of almost a coaching up scenario in a way, and so those can be interesting timings too. And so, as a leader, you have to always think about: am I coaching up? Am I coaching parallel? To my peers, or am I coaching down? And it really shouldn't matter. It's just a matter of coaching, and if you do it the right way, it's hopefully it will be taken in the context in which you are trying to give it.
And you mentioned like the importance of the humans, right, or understanding the human condition, right, which we're all like susceptible to, of course, because we're all humans. But when it comes to like empathy and leadership, how do you incorporate empathy into your leadership style to like really effectively manage and inspire your team?
We don't have to be friends to be able to work together, but I do take that, where I was talking about earlier, I take that responsibility of anybody who's in my team, really anybody. As a C-suite leader, you have to think about the whole organization is your responsibility to some degree. And so, again, if somebody's having a bad day and you recognize that, being able to work with them, being able to make sure that they're either their voice is being heard, or that you are able to lend an ear, or that you're able to at least uh, uh, somehow empathize with their situation, or be able to guide them on where they could potentially get some other assistance or help, is really critical. And so being that type of coach, that type of guide throughout the organization to me, it's always been something that has been ingrained in me. I'm very much about wanting to make sure that my team works well together, and is generally happy. I mean, so happy team ultimately is gonna be able to have a better result than people who are miserable and don't like to work and don't want to come into the job and just feel like it's 8 hours a day and I can't wait to get home. Versus, I tell my teams this a lot, is we spend more waking hours together than we do with our own families. Unfortunately, it's just sometimes how it works during the aspect of our days. And so uh, we want to make sure that we have a good fostering culture, a good working environment. We can laugh, we can share challenges together, we can be able to function as a people might say it's cliche, but as a family in many ways. And people might eye roll over that, because it's I'm not coming to work to be part of a family. I get it, and you don't have to be, but you definitely want to be able to enjoy the job you're doing. Enjoy that you're making a difference in what you're doing. Whether it's creating a widget, or being able to develop a product or a device, or being able to just provide customer service. Everybody would appreciate the work that you're doing, whether it's seen or not. And so, to me, having that empathy as a leader, to being able to work with everybody around me, whether it's my direct team or whether it's the company. It's just crucially important to be able to have that success as a company. From that success means for me as an individual, I need to be the best version of myself to everybody around me every day. And look, I have my bad days too. We all do. And so, my hope is that if I have one of those bad days and somebody recognizes it, that somebody might help me through that day just as much as I'm going to help somebody else through their day.
On that point, let's talk about blameless postmortems. We all make mistakes, right? Nobody's perfect. Everybody's going to make a mistake at some point. Can you talk a little bit about blameless postmortems and maybe how it can maybe impact the team's willingness to take risks and innovate?
Absolutely. So one of the first things I do when I come into an organization is, and I'm leading it, is talking about that whole incident management. We're going to make changes. We're going to, there's going to be incidents because things go down. And it's about what happens afterwards when it's all said and done. And so one of the things that I've instituted, and it's become an IT practice, is a blameless postmortem. In the older days of IT, it used to be people would finger point, oh, you did this, and there would be people who would get fired for making mistakes. Making mistakes is human. That's just who we are. We're humans. We're naturally going to make mistakes. And so one of the things that I look to do is I want to just establish it right from the bat. We're not about finger pointing. And every blameless postmortem, I start with this. We're not about finger pointing. We're not about arguing. All I want to do is get to the aspect of what happened, how did it happen, and how do we make sure it doesn't happen again in the IT world. And when you do that, what I've noticed is instantly everybody opens up. When everybody realizes, oh, the CIO is not here to point fingers and make people accountable and blame, being blameful for that situation. Let's talk about what happened and let's work through it. And suddenly the world opens up. People are willing to talk about how it happened. And people will typically then speak up and go, hey, it was me. I did that. It was my fault, my accident. Whether people speak up about it or not, it's not about that. It's about, let's work through making sure that never happens again. And so those discussions, the people who have been part of them with me have always told me that they've really appreciated it, because it gets out in the open. We know what the problem really was. We document it and we make sure we don't have that problem happen again. And so when we put out at the end of it, when it goes to a client who has a post-incident report, we're able to really confidently say, here's what happened and here's how we're going to make sure we don't have it happen again. We don't put in those reports, oh, this person, did this and they're being held accountable or to blame. Point is the problem happened. Let's just make sure we don't have it happen again. And so just announcing that blameless piece, especially in the IT world, you can hear people have that collective sigh of relief of, all right, let's really talk about the problem. What happened? How did it happen? Could have been any number of circumstances. But then people are willing to open up because they realize that, we're not going to be blaming you on this call. We're not going to be chastising you. We're really just about how do we solve this? How do we make sure we just don't have it happen again?
It makes me, I forgot who said it, but I saw it somewhere the other day, but it was somebody saying that something to the effect of you should never say sorry. And the concept was like, sorry doesn't do anybody any good, right? It's more of, okay, this happened, and this is what I'm doing to mitigate the risk of it happening again. And it shouldn't have happened, and this is what we're doing to make sure it doesn't happen again, right? Versus like, oh, sorry, I messed up. But it just made me think about that. But it's transparency is so important. Trust. If you study people like Patrick Lencioni, the science of the best teams in the world, it's the foundation of trust. Without the trust and the transparency, and that according to Google and Project Aristotle, the environment of psychological safety, right, that will have people feel like they can speak up and own up to their mistakes. Without those types of environments, it's putting the organization in danger because people are going to hide things. And if you hide things, you can't really fix them, can't get to the bottom of why they're happening. And it's just a little bit riskier. So definitely I'm a huge believer in that philosophy of,
And most importantly, that you're going to make the same mistake again. Because if you can't foster that aspect, that culture of talking about what really happened, and to the point of, okay, we're just going to hide the little pieces of what happened, you are very prone to having that same issue happen again.
change is everywhere, right? I mean, change is coming at us like crazy. And humans, typically don't like to change, right? We resist change. Especially like when it's a more tenured established team. How do you manage and like mitigate resistance to change within your organizations?
It's a lot of communication. It really just comes down to whether it's one-on-one, whether it's with a team, whether it's a town hall, communicating and communicating not just from person to person, whether it's face to face, putting information together, having documentation together, talking about why this change needs to occur, and then listening to the feedback. Because yes, change is hard for some people. And so some people may come back and say, I don't want this change. I'm not for this change. This doesn't feel good for me, or they may even say for the company. And so it's an opportunity to have a dialogue. And so you might not get everybody to go along with the change at the end of the day, but if it's something that as a leader, that this is going to be a very fruitful change for the organization, the idea is to really try to have the buy-in from the people who are going to be most affected by it. And for those who are really affected by the aspect of change is not a good thing, sitting down with them, being able to just talk it out. And I've had those situations where I've had people who are like, I really am not for this change. And so at the end of the day, it might be, we'll have to agree to disagree, but I'm asking you to come along for the ride and see how it goes. And typically my commentary would be, if the change looks like it's not going to be fruitful, even though I thought it was going to be at the end of the day, I as a human can, I make those mistakes too. We can go back. If it's something that we really see is not going to work, then we can either go back or we can talk about how to make this better. So it's really just about communication at the end of the day, and really using those aspects of empathy and using those aspects of just having that dialogue with people, making sure that they're heard, really just makes a huge difference at the end of the day. They still, it still might be, hey, we're moving forward with this anyway. I understand that you're trepidatious about it, but I'm asking you to join us in that journey to move forward. And typically they might be reluctant, and at the end of the day, they might enjoy what actually occurred afterwards, or they may have other feedback for you. In either case, it's an opportunity for that dialogue, and make sure that you'll have to spend extra time with that person who is maybe a little fearful of that, but they're going to appreciate that more. And you as a leader should appreciate that, because they're expressing how they feel about it. And you want to make sure that they are, along with you for that journey, especially, everybody's valued. And so, to your point of, everybody deals with it differently. So let's make sure that we are empathetic towards those who might have more of a challenge of change. So I found in my years of experience, those dialogues are very meaningful.
I couldn't agree more. And I think Patrick Lencioni says, he's a team science expert. I mentioned about trust, right? It's like the foundation of trust. But the second part in the cycle of building high performing teams is healthy conflict, right? And so without that communication, you're never going to get that healthy conflict. And if people don't feel heard and they don't feel like they have a say so, right, they're much less likely to get to the next phase in the cycle, and that's committing. They may agree and they may be like, whatever, like, but because they're not heard, they're like, screw this. Like, I don't have a voice in this. Like, why doesn't my opinion matter? Then they could be putting up a lot more resistance versus letting them at least speak their mind, kind of having that healthy conflict, and then saying, okay, look, I understand that you have a good point. Thank you for sharing. But, we're still moving in this direction. They're going to be less resistant and they're going to commit more, at least. Maybe they don't commit 100% and they don't agree with it, but you're going to have less issues with less people on the team if you take the time to do that. So I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more.
And I'm very familiar with that particular aspect of Patrick Lencioni, and I would actually even call it reluctant commitments in one way. It's, they're willing to do it, but they still have that little fear, that piece of doubt in them. And so that's where it's really important to continue to engage with them even after the changes are made.
And change isn't going anywhere, it's accelerating, right? And so, and if we as leaders don't think that it's important for us to be able to get better at mastering change and get better at communicating, which includes listening, right, and taking it seriously, then we're probably going to have more challenges than we really need to have. But it's so key to address a lot of the areas that you're talking about today. So I appreciate you sharing your insights. We are coming up on time, so I'm going to kind of start to close things out here. But it's Scott, in your opinion, what technology does the world need that doesn't exist yet?
I think the next step of our computing evolution is going to be something akin to quantum internet, and it's theoretical today still. It's a theoretical network that allows quantum devices, such as quantum computers and other quantum-based systems, to communicate with each other. And one of the aspects from a security perspective would be, if thought of the right way, this could be an unbreakable security medium. And so it certainly could be used for bad, but from the good side, if really put together the right way as that technology, I think will eventually progress to a point where we have it. There's already pieces of quantum computing already being developed. I think the quantum internet could be the next stage of that, where you could have the aspect of quantum computing, this theoretical network of of uh, uh, of the quantum universe, so to speak, being able to be in cryptography and quantum key distribution and having quantum states within security. You would think about exponential computing power, think about the scientific collaboration that could occur. We've hit Moore's law in many ways in regards to how we do our computing today. I think this is what the next evolution of what our computing and internet could be. And I think we'll need it at some point in regards to, we've hit this plateau. We're getting into this whole aspect of AI. I could see AI helping us get to that quantum computing and quantum internet realm that would just be limitless at that point for us.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I've ever experienced or put this way before, but it's like I can feel my anxiety rising as you're talking about this. I'm like seeing the it's like the merging of Star Trek and the Terminator,
Yeah,
kind of coming
it's not
together
meant to
with
be Skynet for sure,
quantum.
but but
Yeah, but it's like,
I see, you think about, just think about the last 10 years and the evolution of where we've come in regards to how computing, looking the mapping of the genome. I would think about, what quantum computing could do for us for science, and how we could still explore everything that we're still unknown, that still could suddenly, the computing power of that could be limitless, and how we could have medical advancements and how we could really communicate with each other. And so yeah, I try to look at the optimistic side of
yeah,
these
the key
things,
is that
that from
you know how to control it.
right, exactly.
Don't make Skynet, and don't give it like teleportation capabilities like Star Trek. Yeah, that's so Scott, again, thanks for joining us today and sharing your insights. We're both trained as business and executive coaches, and we both obviously have a passion for people. Can you share some of your perspective on the importance of coaching?
Yeah, from everything we've discussed, coaching to me has always been the lifeblood of what I've gone through over my 30 plus years of IT, and especially as a leader. And so one of the things that I'm now working on personally to expand myself is to obtain a business and executive business level coaching certification. I feel like it's the next stage of my evolution, where I've been this leader and I've been able to coach people. But now I want to look at how I can coach more than that, how I could coach other executives and how I could coach other people in regards to how they can work through the aspect of business and the aspect of maybe their challenges of how do they rise up, or how do they get to the next level, or how do they get through a critical problem that maybe is causing them some sort of anxiety or issue, and how they can live their lives through their job. So to me, I'm excited about this next stage of my own evolution, to be able to take that, what I've learned, and be that from that leadership aspect, and really expand it to the next level of how I could help more people. Because I really feel like that's my next stage of my evolution, is helping people. Just not just about being a CIO, but now being a coach to anyone who would need my services.
Yeah, I like how you put that. It's like the next step in your evolution, and I don't know if I've ever really thought about it that way, but I've done a ton of work in the space, not only working with coaches myself, but also being trained, and whether it's executive coaching, systemic coaching. Um, but it's when I've been through programs or helped lead programs that are coaching or guiding or advising people through, I learn like so much more. And it's like it's like it's a different dynamic when you're actually coaching somebody or helping somebody else than when you're just trying to grow yourself. And so I like how you put that it's like you're evolving.
I've had my own coaching. I've been coached by others, and I've always had this profound sense of almost enlightenment, after each coaching session, of how I feel like I've gotten to a point where I can be a better person or a better leader, or some aspect that's really helped me in my life. So I want to take that and I want to apply that to helping others.
Yeah, that's good. We need more people like that in the world, for sure. So, Scott, again, I appreciate your time. Listeners, be sure to check out his work and follow him on social media. Website links and social handles will be in the show description. Finally, Scott, in relation from our time today or from our conversation today, what's one piece of actionable advice you'd like to leave the audience with?
Yeah, be a better listener. We all have those aspects, like I talked about throughout this time, that it's tough to be a listener versus somebody who is reacting. And so our nature is tougher to listen, and when problems are really tough, it's really tough to listen versus jumping in or being able to dive into to resolving a conflict. Taking that time out, being able to listen, I feel like is a lost art, especially in the fast paced world that we're in today. And so my biggest piece of advice is take a breath, take a step back, take a time out, listen to the world around you, and be able to react accordingly once you have a chance to take all that in.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, listening is it's definitely an art, and it's a skill. And if you haven't, if anybody listening hasn't actually looked up on like how to listen and deep listening and actually found some information on that, it's much deeper than most of you probably perceive that it is. But great advice, Scott. And definitely easier said than done, right? So it does take practice to listen effectively. But thanks again for your time. Listeners, don't forget to help your fellow tech humans. Share this podcast and follow me on LinkedIn at Javier Guerra 360. See you next time on the Tech Human Experience.
The Tech Human Experience